The Scotch Gambit is one of the easiest ways for you to get a strong attack, especially if you're below 1500. I've already made a video about it that almost got 1 million views, but many of you told me about the same problem. Your opponents go off the main lines and you're not sure what to do. Today I'll show you the complete Scotch Gambit guide, so no matter how black plays, you'll know how to continue. Alright, the Scotch Gambit arises from playing pawn to d4 right here instead of the usual Italian game. You strike in the center, putting pressure right away. You attack this pawn, you're also threatening to push the pawn forward and chase away this knight. In most cases, your opponents will capture this pawn, and now instead of recapturing the pawn right away, you play bishop c4, which leads to the Scotch Gambit. And here you have a lot of activity, have these two active bishops, your knight is ready either to jump forward or maybe to recapture the pawn, and you have a lot of very cool attacking ideas and combinations and traps that we'll talk about in a moment. But before we dive into this, let me address this very situation, because some of you guys wrote me that you're having a hard time even reaching the Scotch Gambit original position. Because here, besides capturing the pawn, some of your pawns will either defend this pawn by playing pawn to d6 or even counter-attack with knight to f6. How to play here? Here's the way. You go forward with pawn to d5, pushing back this knight from c6. Now, it can't really come forward because you could easily just capture it, but even better, you can capture this pawn on e5, and now this knight on d4 is doomed. It has no way out. You control these squares where it could possibly retreat to, and therefore the knight will just be captured. Well, that's totally bad for black. They're losing the knight right away. If instead the knight comes back to e7, then now you take this pawn on e5, and as black recaptures, it feels equal for black, but here there's a great move, queen e2, that virtually wins the game. And the following idea is really spectacular. The knight comes back, black is feeling totally safe and secure, but now you play d6. And you try to use the fact that these pieces are a bit clumsy right here, and also the knight cannot move away because of your queen standing against the king. And if the pawn is captured, now knight to c4 hits the pawn. And at first it feels like, okay, black will just defend it somehow. Alright, but how? Now this knight cannot move out of the way because it's pinned down to the king. If the queen tries to defend this pawn, you can always just add more pressure, and again, there's no way for black out. And it's not just a pawn, because you capture it, you check the king. After the king moves, you capture here on f7. You see what's going to happen here? It's going to be a total disaster for black. You're going to attack all these pieces of black and capture them, right? And it's also funny that many of your opponents will try to chase away this knight from c4 by just pushing the pawn forward, but that's a classical nightmare situation. Your beginner-level opponents will often try to keep it simple and defend this central pawn by going pawn to d6. And now you could either push forward or take on e5, both moves are perfectly fine, but from my experience it's easier for you to just capture right here. Because after an exchange, you then capture on d8, and now there is an unpleasant choice for black. If they take it with the knight, then they are going to lose this pawn on e5, which will no longer be guarded by their knight. And otherwise, if they capture with a king, which is what they'll do most of the time, then, for example, the most played line goes like this. You go bishop b5, potentially putting pressure to this knight, threatening to capture, to ruin the pawn structure, and in general, it's quite uncomfortable for black to have their king along this open file, and also the king lost the right to castle in this game. And in most cases, they're going to try to defend this knight, but then after an exchange, you then capture this pawn on e5, you're hitting the bishop once again, they're trying to fight back and also capture your central pawn, but what they're missing is that in this Scotch Gambit, your knight is a real forkaholic. You just strike once again and win. Let's say you successfully got your opponent into the main line of the Scotch Gambit, now what? When I'm playing this against title players, I see knight f6 pretty much all the time. Bishop c5 is also considered to be the main line, but when you're playing this on casual online blitz games on amateur level, people play a whole lot of different moves, and I also want to show you some of them. For example, bishop b4 is very tempting because they can give a check to your king, and now you play c3, attacking the bishop. You want to seize the initiative, you want to keep attacking with your every move that you're playing, and now as you recapture, it seems very easy for black to just move the bishop somewhere. But where should it go? It's actually much trickier than it seems. There is only one correct move for black, and everything else pretty much loses the game. For example, if they try to play it safe and go back to e7, so that the bishop is totally safe here, that's losing the game on the spot thanks to queen to d5, some advanced version of scholar's checkmate, and it really works here. I mean, the only way to defend this pawn would be knight to h6, but then you capture it, and at the very least, black will lose a knight, if not got checkmated right away. That is very bad for black. Okay, what else can they play? The bishop is attacked. Bishop c5 is another common mistake because now you have this tactics. Again, super common for the Haxo Gambit for those of you who are more advanced. And here for this line as well, you continue with queen to d5. Therefore, it wasn't even a sacrifice really. You're going to get your bishop back right away, right on the next turn. But also you totally exposed your opponent's king. The king lost the right to castle, and it's very easy to attack from here. Also, we'll see something very similar in one of the main lines. That's why I'll skip it for now. The only viable option for black here is retreating back to a5, but again, you see how precise your opponent needs to be. And even after that, it doesn't mean that black's life is going to be easy. You're going to castle, and now you have plenty of attacking opportunities. For example, if black plays knight f6, one common way for you to attack it is just to push the pawn forward and to chase this knight away. That's one common way. The other one is bishop to a3, cutting the king off and making it impossible for black to castle. And if black tries pawn to d6 to block the diagonal, and they're insisting on castling on the next move, then you can play in style of Paul Morphy and Mikhail Tal, just pawn e5 to break open the center, and after this pawn sacrifice, you're preventing them from castling. Then another common attacking move is queen to b3, setting up this battery and hitting this pawn on f7, and again, you're going to enjoy a lot of beautiful victories right here. Of course, sometimes we play almost like Tal and Morphy, which sacrifice a lot of pieces, and only that final checkmate part is missing. But anyway, we're trying, right? And we're having fun. Now, your other bishop is also making a very good job controlling those two squares, making it very difficult to defend. And if they play queen d7, trying to guard this pawn that way, then there is rook to d1, hitting the queen. And again, your two bishops are cutting off all other alternatives. And if the queen moves, then there is a boom, checkmate. One of the most common moves by black is pawn to h6. They're trying to stop your knight from jumping forward and taking part into the attack of this square f7, similar to the fried liver attack. But the issue is pawn h6 is just way too slow, and black is falling behind in development, making your attack even more furious. And here, you can play whatever. I mean, you're having a very comfortable position. One way to go about this, which I love a lot, is to offer this pawn sacrifice, and you're playing kind of similar to the Danish Gambit, where you're giving up these pawns for the sake of even quicker development. And now these two monstrous bishops are totally overwhelming. Your opponent is mostly completely undeveloped, and you are ready to go. For example, if they try going pawn d6, because otherwise, if they bring out the knight, you can always kick it back, right? If they go d6, you can try to break open the center with this rook move and get to the king right away. If your opponent tries to slow you down by pinning this knight, you can still play pawn e5. And actually in this position, as always, you also have this queen b3 battery, also very strong. You have plenty of attacking options, but e5 is also very straightforward. And black captures, still relying on that pin, you have a really fantastic idea. You can sacrifice the queen right here, and after black captures it, there's bishop b5. Very precise move. Together with the knight, you control these squares, making it hard for black to cover. If c6, then knight takes c6 comes with this discover check. Then you grab the queen. Then you grab the bishop with a material advantage. You're winning right here. And otherwise, if black tries to avoid this and just move the king away, then I'm not even sure how to call it. It's almost a double checkmate. Of course, you don't need to memorize these exact moves. What really matters are the attacking patterns. And if you want to know how to find attacking moves on your own, regardless of the opening, I teach that in my free masterclass. The link is below and you can check it out after the video. Now, I know you're eager to try out the Scotch Gambit, but sometimes your opponents are not cooperative and they deviate. Let me show you some tricks about that. One way to go about this is that initially you can go into the supposedly Italian game, but on the next turn you can still strike in the center with pawn to d4. Black's best and most popular move is still capturing this pawn, which will get you to the Scotch Gambit. And finally, you can push the Scotch Gambit even more aggressively right away by playing d4 on the second move and then play knight f3. Most of the time, your opponents will still develop their knight, getting right back to the Scotch Gambit. Alright, let's continue. What if black goes here bishop c5? That's a nice move, also one of the main alternatives of black, developing their bishop and holding on to this extra pawn on d4. And now you pretend like you gave up on an idea to get this pawn back, and you just offer an exchange. And if black captures it, which is the most natural and the most played move, and also a big blunder because of bishop takes f7. That's the Haxo Gambit stuff, and after king recaptures, there's this queen to d5 double attack. And with this little combo, again, you're exposing the king. As the king comes back, instead of capturing the bishop right away, there's another little trick. Queen h5, this in-between check, provokes black to push this pawn forward, which is a vital weakness. We're going to see why in a moment. Now you recapture the bishop, and while the king looks innocent, it's Not anymore, because it moved back and forth and it can't castle, all right? Which means that it's going to stay there in the middle of the board for the rest of the game. And you're going to pick up this pawn, go bishop g5, castle, and then just launch this decisive attack against his centralized king. It's pretty straightforward. What if black tries something like this, offering you an exchange of queens? You're going to capture this pawn instead. And now again, we see why it was so good for us having this pawn right here and not on g7, because now this whole diagonal is very exposed. If black captures this pawn, not at all a problem. You can just move the king or cover, and king d1 is actually the most brutal way. You're even okay with keeping your king in the middle of the board, but now you make the room for the rook to come into play and to hit both the queen and the king. And of course, the queen can escape, but the issue is their rook, right? That was the main attacking idea of yours, and that's their problem. There's no way for them to cover this rook, and otherwise you're just going to go ahead and capture it. For example, if they try to cover, you're going to capture it and play rook e1, and it's all over. You may be thinking, Igor, it can't be true that it is just so hopeless for black. And you're right. Black can avoid all these traps by resigning. Bonk. But seriously, of course, if you're facing a more advanced opponent, then they may know the right way, which is knight f6, not taking this pawn, and then after you kick this knight again, it's not moving the knight, but playing pawn d5. And you see that it is very counterintuitive. And I'll show you this line real quick, in case you ever encounter a more advanced and prepared opponent. So what you do here is, you move the bishop here, pinning one of the knights, while the other knight is still attacked. They move the knight out of danger. Now you take this central pawn, hitting the bishop goes somewhere, for example, they check your king, you cover, and then we get into a more or less normal position with no tricks. Let's say both sides castle, they'll bring the bishop out, you can take on c6 to double their pawn chain, and then after queen c2, you're attacking these pawn weaknesses. Also, it's nice that your knights are supporting each other, therefore if black ever captures, no problem, you just recapture with the other knight, and maybe you'll add also another rook to hit this pawn, but nevertheless, black avoided all the opening traps, and if they play very precisely, it is about equal. Alright, finally we've approached the main line, knight to f6, which is considered the best move by black. And now you push the pawn forward, kicking this knight, and again, you begin attacking right away. Now, what can black do? Actually, it's very interesting that, again, a lot of natural moves of black are just loosened. For example, knight to g4 seems like a very natural way to get rid of the attack and to counter-strike your pawn, but in fact, it's a bad one. You could just castle, and it turns out that capturing this pawn is just bad for black, because rook e1 would pin the knight and you'd win it, simply. Therefore, this is just pointless anyways, and black is horsing around wasting time. But on top of that, there is also a very tricky variation which works extremely well in blitz, is when you sacrifice the bishop right here, and on the next turn, your knight jumps forward with a check, but also exposing a discovered attack of their knight. And the idea here is, on the next turn, you could grab this knight back while the king is exposed and continue your attack after that. But there is again an absolutely evil move, queen to f3, threatening checkmate. And the thing is, pretty much every one of your opponents will blunder the following checkmate, because they think that this move is a perfect solution. It covers the square and attacks your queen. But what they're missing is that you can knock black out with the left hook. And in these positions, you've got queen to d5, sometimes even queen b3, and it just wins the game on the spot. Another fun line is when your opponent is trying to pin your pawn and attack it. Instead of defending it, you just castle away, unpinning your pawn and renewing a threat to his knight. At this point, your opponent will figure it out that capturing this pawn is not really an option, because after an exchange, you're going to put your rook to e1, pin his king and queen, and win some material. Therefore, the knight has to go anyway, and that queen e7 move was basically useless. Now you can even take advantage of it and just gain one more tempo, hitting the queen. If black tries to fight back, once again after an exchange, what they fail to realize is that this rook to e1 move is very annoying. That pins the queen down to the king, and in order to save it, they'll have to cover, but now after an exchange, you just play pawn to f4, again taking full advantage of the pin, and now you're attacking the knight, the queen, the king, literally everything. In one of the games, they played queen c5, trying to get away from that danger and maybe counter-attacking your bishop, but you gotta be very, very careful with the following line, because here after queen h5, and if you pull it off, your opponent may abandon the game by crushing his phone against the wall, so be careful. What about black moving his knight to the center of the board? Well, that's a little better, but nevertheless, that knight is very shaky there. As you can see, you can easily attack it with maybe a queen or maybe a rook right here, and the knight doesn't have that many squares to retreat to. Plus, this pawn on d4 is still hanging, you're attacking it twice, and for example, if black tries defending it that way and developing a bishop, then that's already a decisive blunder, because after queen e2, it turns out that the knight has nowhere to go. Your pawn controls these two squares, your bishop takes away that square on g5, and his own bishop on c5 took away the final square. That's why it was wrong. And now the knight is just lost right here on e4. If he tries defending it, that's not going to work if you know that special chess move, an en passant capture. And now the knight is also pinned on top of all the other problems. And you're just winning the game. I'll show you an example variation again. No need to remember it, but it is just so cool to see what's going to happen right here. Let's say he's trying to hold on to this knight. You add one more attacker. The knight is still pinned, and now there is just no way to defend it. Black castles, you capture the knight. Now you're up a piece. So you should normally convert this into a win. But black may be thinking, okay, let me pin this knight. Maybe I can get it back. But then you sacrifice the bishop right here and continue with this check, still with a double attack. You just got your queen out of this pin, and now you can capture this bishop on c5 on the next turn, ending up with an extra material. But if black thinks, okay, let me just retreat back because they need to do something against this check, instead of taking the bishop right away, probably with a knight, you guys actually seen one more in between move, also attacking the queen. And after the queen captures it, now queen takes c5 is going to win one more bishop of black, ending up with 2 minor pieces extra. Alright, now let's talk about the fish in the room. According to Stockfish, black's best move is knight to f6, but after he hit the knight, is not to move the knight anywhere, but to counter-strike with pawn d5. This is that counterintuitive move known by advanced players and typically unknown by everyone else. And what do you do here? You move the bishop to b5, we have seen something similar before. Now one of his knights is pinned, the other one is attacked, both of them are struggling badly, and of course black will probably get the knight out of danger. Now you take this central pawn and also put pressure on this pinned knight on c6, black will probably defend it, and after an exchange you castle and we get to a more or less normal chess position. At this point black will probably develop this bishop either to this more passive square or better for black to a more active position, but your moves will be the same. You can gain some tempos, chasing away this knight from e4, the only square is here, but now you can also get one more tempo, hitting it back once again. Again, the knight can move here or here, no, doesn't matter, knight e4 is better for black, a more active move. Now bishop e3 to develop a bishop and also to solidify your position overall. Let's say black castles, now you develop this knight, you're also kind of threatening to capture it and to disrupt his pawn structure. And if black captures right here himself, then after queen recaptures, we get to a normal middle game position. And again, it's not too bad if black's best option is basically an equal position. You're not risking anything. Now, what do you do here in case you get to a position like that? Well, clearly you have this pawn majority on the king side and the center of the board. And ideally, you'd wish to just move it forward, probably like f5, f6. And if you can get this one, you'll probably checkmate his king pretty quickly. So that's like a very straightforward second plan. You probably wish to bring your rook into play, just to be sure that all your pieces are active. Another thing is your opponent may wish to activate these pawns because he's got a pawn majority in the center. And if black tries to move the bishop out of the way to play c5 and d4 and to push these central pawns forward, it's best for you if you can blockade them and prevent this from happening so that he cannot advance in the center and gain more space. There's this nice move, knight to b3, which provides superb control of these two squares, c5 and d4, and thus black can't move his pawn forward. If black tries moving it forward now, you simply capture any of these pawns, right? It's totally bad for black. That's your idea. You want to hold control, grasp control of these two squares. And if you need even more control, you can always play queen to c3, which will provide one more attacker to these two squares. Therefore, your idea is to blockade it so that your opponent has no counter ideas, and after that, you get back to your plan. Rook e1, f5, and attack probably on the king side. If you want to learn how to find attacking ideas in any positions, not just this one, I explain that step by step in this free masterclass up there. And if you want to feel more confident in positional chess planning, such as this position we see right now on the board, I highly recommend this video about Capablanca. He was a true master of that.